Hey everyone, Alodar here, and today we're going to talk about the recently released vanilla private server called Northdale. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, although I'm sure you probably are if you're watching this video, but if you're not familiar with it or you're watching this video somewhere down the road, Northdale is a private server that was launched by the Lights Hope group, and its launch has been eagerly anticipated by pretty much everyone in the vanilla community. We've had heard about this launch going back a couple of months now, and most of us that stream or create content or whatever, we've basically been kind of waiting around until this launch happened, which was this past Saturday. So in this video, I'm going to kind of go over the good and the bad that happened during this launch, and maybe to be honest, it's maybe something that Blizzard, if you're watching, you could take notes on how these launches go. I know Blizzard has a obligation to send cease and desist orders and stuff like that, but I'm hoping that they've actually got somebody that's watching how these launches go and how people react in the game, and maybe some of the things that Lights Hope is doing to try and make the game or the launch run a little bit smoother. For any of you that were around when retail vanilla was launched, I can tell you it was not a very good launch. It was the queue times were horrendous. The servers were dropping constantly. There were constant issues for the first several days. Now, obviously, they've had a lot more practice at this in the last several years, but I believe that there's still a lot that they could learn by looking at how, in particular, this private server was launched, and then maybe take a look at some of the ideas that Lights Hope had, and perhaps take a look at whether or not they want to implement it. And even if nothing else, they could take a look at it and say, yeah, okay, that's definitely not something we want to implement. Or maybe they could come up with a better idea or work on top of the ideas that Lights Hope had, and maybe kind of expand or do something slightly better. So anyways, we'll take a look at both the good and the bad things that happened for this launch. So let's get into the good first. The first thing that I want to point out is that there was a ridiculous number of people that were playing on this server. So when the server was first announced it was going live, I predicted there'd be about 8,000 to 10,000 people playing on it. It turned out I was a little off, and at its highest peak, I believe it was just over 14,000 people were playing on the server at one time. I started playing on the server not too long after it went live, and by not too long I mean several hours, and then I played for about 20 hours straight. So I got up at about 8:30 my time, started playing by 9, and I basically went for 20 hours straight, with barely getting up from my chair. In that time, and since then I've been playing nonstop as well. So I'm not talking about just how the server was when it launched, but also in the time since as well, and how it's been holding up. So the average population that I've noticed when I've been playing is usually 8,000 when it's at low population, and upwards of 12 to 12.5 thousand people during its peak hours. So the population is still tremendously high. One of the things that Lights Hope did with this server launch is they dramatically increased the dynamic respawn rates. So if you're not familiar with the term dynamic respawn, it basically controls how quickly a mob will respawn based on how many people are in the zone and killing those particular mobs. So when there's 14,000 people or over 14,000 people online, and in the starting zones, basically all of them in the starting zones, you can imagine the number of corpses all over the place that you'd see. All you saw were people like flooding into the areas where mobs were, and grouping up as much as they could so they could get credit for the kills. And mobs were just instantly dying and respawning almost instantly as well, which later on I'll talk about can get you into a little bit of trouble. But So leveling is still very doable because the spawn rate has been significantly increased. So if you're thinking about joining in, you're like, oh my God, there's 14,000 people. I'll never be able to level. You will. I got through leveling with no problem. There were some issues where I wasn't able to tag mobs as quickly as other people, but I mean, I got to level 20 in 19 hours. So I'd be hard pressed to do that on a regular server. So if you're thinking about trying a private server out, or worried about joining a server because it's so close to fresh and there's going to be so many people competing for mobs, I wouldn't let that deter you from trying out the server. Some questions are actually a challenge now, actually, because of this dynamic respawn rate. That'll also get into in a little bit as well. But there's also an opportunity to grind a lot through your questing as well. I actually grinded through 2 levels in Torren Mill. I just sat there and killed mobs over and over and over again, and I realized that I was getting like 165 XP or something like that for every mob that I killed, and I was killing them so fast. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna stay here for a while because I can kill 10 of these and get more than I'm getting for a quest reward. So I just started doing that over and over again. So now, some other good points about this is that, or this server, was that the uptime has been tremendous. In the 20 hours that I played, the server went down once for maintenance, and there was one other lag spike. Other than that, the server has been extremely good. Like, if you're talking about lag, I was actually blown away about how little lag there actually was, and that's what we talked about in Discord. The people that I was playing with, how like there's 14,000 people. They're all basically in the starting zones, and the game was basically running pretty much lag free. It was actually, from that point of view, it was actually tremendous. So big props to the guys at Lights Hope. You actually you really knew what you were doing as far as handling the population goes. So. Another good thing about the server is the faction balance is relatively very even. Quite typically, the PvP crowd goes Horde, a good chunk of them, and also the PvEers typically like to go Alliance. A lot of this has to do with racials and also because of what classes are on each side. So on some retail servers, you see a tremendous amount of variance in the population. So I remember when retail originally released, there were some servers that had like 65% Horde, and only like 35% Alliance. It was tremendously, and then there were other servers where it was exactly the opposite. So it's tremendously balanced. The numbers that I saw was that it was about 52% Alliance and 48% Horde. I would personally prefer to see the Alliance side a little bit higher, because I hate queue times in Battlegrounds, and generally, or not generally, but quite often, a lot of people that are more into the game for raiding, and if they tend to go Alliance, they're not going to be queuing up for Battlegrounds, and this is why quite often you see the Horde queue time is so much lower, or the Horde queue time, sorry, so much higher, whereas the Alliance can quite often be instant. So I would personally prefer to see Alliance at about 55%, but 52 to 48 seems to be pretty good. We'll see what it's like once we hit 60. Now, as far as the bad points of the server, so it wasn't all fantastic. There were some issues with the server as well. If you're a no changes person, like an absolutely strictly no changes, then for one, the population does not accurately reflect what vanilla retail World of Warcraft was like. Fact of the matter was, I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe that initially each server maxed out at 1,500 people before a queue popped in, and then over the course of the next week or something like that, they increased those populations up to about 2,500, and that was the maximum number of people allowed on a regular retail vanilla server. Now, and this was to kind of help with queue times and where the stabilization of the server kind of maxed out at. So the fact that there was over 14,000 people on one server obviously it doesn't accurately reflect how old vanilla servers were, right? So if that's going to bother you, then you might not like this. Personally, I like a population higher than 2,500 people. I just like to see the world a little bit livelier. I don't know if 14,000 people is the right number, but I believe that there's a number slightly higher than 2,500 that would be better. I'm thinking probably around 5,000 to 7,000 people would probably be about the max that I'd like to see the servers at. You got to keep in mind that if they max this population at about say 6,000 people, and then it settles down to about 3 after you flush out the people that are just not gonna cut it past the first month. If it cuts down to 3,000 people, then that's still healthy. If you max it out at 2,500 and then it falls down to 1,000, that's not so good. So now as far as the dynamic respawn that I had mentioned earlier, they increased so that people could actually get through their quests and get going. This is almost a necessity that they had to do this, so I don't blame them for doing it, but there were some issues with it as well. So had they not done this, it would have taken people hours just to get past their level 5 starting hub. So they were almost kind of pinned to a corner where, listen, they had to do this. There's nothing, what else were they going to do? Now, some of the quests, though, became almost impossible to complete because of these dynamic respawns. There's some quests where the respawn rate is so high you can't actually get past the initial set of mobs because they're respawning so fast in order to get to the final end goal, which is beyond that, or beyond the group of mobs that you're trying to get through, right? So I'll give you an example. The quest Guns of Northwatch. When you go around to the towers, it's virtually impossible to, in regular retail WoW or Vanilla Classic, you could solo these quests no problem. It's not hard to do, but in this it would have been. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to comment down below, I soloed it, it was no problem. If you went in there and watched people try to get through there, it was almost comical how many groups of people would go in and try and start fighting these mobs and work their way in a little bit, and then everything would be respawning as they were killing the mobs, and eventually they had just so many mobs on them that they couldn't get any further, and they'd just wipe, and that would be the end of it, and it would just be rinse and repeat over and over again. So some of these quests, that's an example, just got extraordinarily hard, and they were almost impossible to do without a really good group. Let's see. Another issue with the dynamic respawn was that when you needed items that were looted off of mobs, quite often the mobs were respawning so fast that it kept you in combat, and you weren't able to, you were having to fight off 2 or 3 mobs at a time, and you weren't able to loot the mobs before they despawned. They would despawn. The corpses would despawn after 5 or 6 seconds. So if you weren't quick, they despawned. Or if you went to loot and then you tried to skin afterwards, you wouldn't be able to do that in time. Or if you skinned and you failed that skinning, by the time you tried to do another skinning attempt on that mob, it would despawn and you'd fail. So anyways, that was another issue. Nodes, mining nodes and chest nodes are another example where the nodes would respawn instantly. So this was noticed very quickly. So the IT guys, or the guys over at Lights Hope, they turned these nodes off initially for the I think it was maybe the full first day at least, until they came up with a fix for the nodes. But because they were respawning over and over again, or they found this out very quickly, so it's not like, oh no, the economy's destroyed. They found this out before a lot of us even really taken up mining or anything like that. So the nodes would respawn, and you could just sit there and just keep plucking away and collecting as much ore as you possibly could. Same as chests. If you came across a chest that typically had a magic item in it, or magic piece of gear, you collect all the gear plus the gold that's in it, and then just keep doing this over and over and over again. And you could imagine how much somebody could make off of that. So this stuff got turned off very, very quickly. So it didn't affect the economy at all. Um, let's see. Also, because of despawn or the dynamic respawn, it also became almost impossible to do many of the escort quests, and I believe it's still to this. It's still tough, but it's a little bit better now. But initially, a lot of the escort quests at the beginning of the game, I mean, forget about it. You just weren't going to get it done. One that I'll give you an example of is the I can't remember the name of the quest, but it's the shredder machine in the Northern Barrens, where you've got to escort it out of. You've got to escort it out. Is it called Sledge, whatever it's called? Anyways, you've got to escort it out, and I went and got the key. I managed to get into a group, or I actually, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of ninja'd it off of another group, but they were being jerks. They deserved it. Anyways, I got the key off of somebody, or off of the guy up top, and then went down to go start the escort quest. And there's another group that was just starting it as I was running up. So I was just going to wait for the next one because I knew the respawn was really high. As soon as they clicked to start, the machine moves around a little bit, and then he took one step, and then a horde of mobs attacked it. And no matter how fast this entire group of players tried to kill these mobs, they just died and instantly respawned again. And the shredder machine didn't take more than one step. And I sat there and watched this like 2 or 3 times, and every time it was the exact same thing. Like, you could not get this thing to move. The escort quest was essentially broken at this point. Another one is the one up in where the Guns of Northwatch quest is, down near Ratchet, and you've got to escort the elf out and down to Ratchet. That elf isn't going anywhere. Okay, like the respawn in that castle area was absolutely ridiculous when I was going through. It was almost instant. Like within a second, the mob that you killed was respawning. So you can imagine trying to walk him down the path and then out, and where all the mobs are attacking him and stuff. Just forget about it. Like, and if it's still doing that now, don't even bother. Just get out of there and go do something else. Let's see. There were some other minor issues that I noticed with the server. So there were some minor bugs that I noticed. Nothing too major, though, I'll be honest. And it's not like I've never seen any of these on Blizzard servers as well. So there was an example where I saw mobs floating in the floor in the entranceway to Wailing Caverns. So instead of they wouldn't be able to attack you or anything like that, but all you'd see is like their head going through the floor, and it was only like 2 mobs, so the rest of them were working perfectly fine. And I haven't been down to Wailing Caverns since, so they may have fixed it already. But you could see the mobs kind of running up and down the floor and stuff like that. It was like, well, what's going on here? But it, little things like that, nothing really too major. There's always going to be bugs here and there. I mean, if you want a classic vanilla World of Warcraft experience with no changes, you better be looking for some bugs, because there was a lot of bugs in the original version of World of Warcraft. So, and things like what I just mentioned with like mobs being stuck in the floor, that was normal. So, yes, it is a bug. Yes, it is something that they'll fix, and yes, it was something you definitely saw in retail World of Warcraft. So overall, though, just some like final thoughts here. As far as the launch itself went, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I think it was the best launch I've ever experienced. It was. If any of you guys are from Lights Hope or are watching this, you guys did a really tremendous job. I don't have any. I mean, the Lights Hope staff, I don't really know any of them or anything like that. But this launch was tremendous. I played on other private servers where there's been a launch, Elysium or et cetera. This server, as far as the quality, the uptime, and especially when you compare how many people were on this launch as compared to other launches, absolutely incredible. Like a really, really big thumbs up to how everything went. The lack of crashes, et cetera, is absolutely tremendous. So, and I really am hoping that Blizzard takes a look at what Lights Hope has done with this server and maybe jot down some notes and say, hey, what did they do? What did we like? What did we not like? What did they do that maybe didn't turn out the way that they'd hoped? Maybe it turned out better, and just really kind of examine how these launches go, just so that when they launch their own server, they maybe have a better idea as to what they want to do. Is there a possibility that Blizzard could have dynamic respawn for servers? Are they going to expand the number of people that are on servers? One of the primary reasons why they didn't allow more than 2,500 people on a server back 14 years ago was because the servers just couldn't handle it. If Blizzard back then had servers that could handle it, what would they have allowed then? Like, they started out with, I think, 1,500 and then went up to 2,500. If they knew that their servers could handle 5,000 people each, would they have had 5,000 people? Do you want to see that many people? Do you want to see more people or less people? What's the right number for you? Maybe leave a comment below. And keep in mind that hindsight's kind of 20/20, right? Like, a lot of these ideas, like the dynamic respawn, it was a great. I personally think it was something that needed to be done so that people could get through the initial levels. Otherwise, nobody was going to move anywhere. We'd still be level 1s right now, trying to tag mobs with their daggers, and there'd only be one person to tag and 500 people each standing around every mob spawn point. So it was a necessary evil, unfortunately. But now that they've done it, I'm sure that there's things that they maybe would have done differently, and maybe that's something that they could look at. Maybe other people that have private servers, and in particular, maybe that's something Blizzard could take a look at and say, hey, this is what happened when they increased dynamic respawn. Let's look at the issues that they had and try and fix those issues. If they're going to actually implement it, we don't know that. So anyways, those are my thoughts with the vanilla private server release of Northdale. Overall, like I said, I love the launch. If you're thinking about trying a private server, I would strongly suggest Northdale is your choice. Seeing a large number of people wherever you go is fantastic. It makes the world feel alive, and you won't have problems leveling. There's people that are just, I don't know what they're doing, taking shifts or something. Somebody that's going to hit 50 today, 4 days in, it's a little ridiculous. But I've been playing in my spare time. I've got a full-time job, and I'm close to hitting 30 today. By the time this video is released, I'll probably be 31 or 32. So, which I'm planning on releasing the video tomorrow. So anyways, I would strongly suggest trying out the server. It's really, really well put together. There's been other servers where I play it and it's like, this just doesn't really have the quality there. This server is really, really good. I'm really enjoying my time there so far. And I think it's going to last quite a long time. I think this server is going to be the server to play on until the official release of Blizzard's classic servers. So I don't think that there's going to be any other re-releases of other servers. I don't see there being a point, as I believe that the Blizzard classic servers are probably going to come out in just a little over a year or so. Anyways, that's my 2 thoughts for whatever it's my 2 bits for whatever it's worth. And if you ever want to come and chat to me, please feel free to come join me on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Alodar. I'll put the link below. Follow me on Twitter at Alodar Silmore, and if you want, leave a comment down below the video. If you enjoyed the video, if it was informative at all, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and if you could subscribe to my channel, and I'll be doing regular videos primarily on vanilla World of Warcraft. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.